Welcome into a rainy Wednesday edition here on this holiday week of Mic'd Up on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now. I am your host, Mike Asti, and I am joined, as always, by Mike Vukovcan. We are going to take you through the Pittsburgh sports scene, what's going on in and around Pittsburgh sports, which will include a national topic with no local or regional teams involved in the madness of March right now. At Final Four being set, we'll also talk Pirates because the Pirates now are 24 hours away, give or take, from opening day, as this is opening day eve for Major League Baseball, and then for most teams in Major League Baseball, and then also some news around the Pittsburgh Steelers and if a move moved the needle at all. We are going to start, though, here on, again, this rainy Wednesday with the Final Four. So the Final Four is set for any of you that did not stay up late, as some of those games would have taken you well past many of your bedtimes. We have the Final Four. Some surprises, some maybe not. Gonzaga is there. Gonzaga are 1 seed. They're going for history. I think, honestly, it's been kind of undercovered. They win this title. Not only is it the first ever, but it is the first undefeated full season since Bob Knight's 76 team to do it during a pandemic, to do it with more teams, a longer tournament. The conversation will then move to, is that more impressive? And I think it is. UCLA, big upset over Michigan. Michigan, despite injuries, many thought they wouldn't go even to the Elite Eight as a 1 seed. They get there, but then lose to UCLA, a blue blood in the Final Four, but not one you'd expect. An 11 seed UCLA hadn't even been to the Elite Eight since 2008. They get to the Final Four now. Ben Howland, I wonder if he's happy or not by what's happening with UCLA. Baylor and Houston in Texas rounding things out. So 2 Texas teams, which is also odd for college basketball. Mike, what are your thoughts? I mean, when you look at this, for me personally, I actually had some of these Final Four teams, despite my bracket basically being thrown through the trash early on in the tournament. But I certainly feel that UCLA is that surprise right now of the tournament as an 11 seed, even though the brand name doesn't say that. Gonzaga still has all the pressure, and I'd imagine is a heavy favorite to this point. But what are your thoughts on these Final Four?
It kind of played out like I thought. I had 3 of the Final Four teams.
Okay.
I had the only one I missed was Alabama, so it's kind of played out what I expected. But I thought this was, despite the fact that I believe there's only been one buzzer beater that sent something into overtime or decided a game. I thought this was a really good tournament so far.
Right.
Competitive from the first round into the last round. A lot of times, we see, aside from your occasional, Cinderellas, the first and second round maybe can not be that competitive. I thought it's been this year. I thought it's good to see new programs stepping up. And I think you touched upon a point with Gonzaga. Not only is it maybe a little bit undercovered, I think Gonzaga is the best basketball program in the country right now. As far as going into next year, he's going to lose Jalen Suggs. He's going to lose their big man. They're going to lose a handful of guys to the draft, but
they're going to retool and probably be a 1 seed again.
Retool, and they're going to be just as good. It's amazing how that program up in the Northwest has turned into a program like that. They're comparable with Duke. They're comparable with Kansas. That's just an unbelievable story in basketball. What he's on what's been able to been built up there.
Absolutely. You could also argue Mark Few maybe is one of the most underrated coaches in all of sports in the country, just because everyone can say Hall of Fame coaches have built up programs, and some have. We talked about this before when we were discussing Bob Knight with 900. He didn't do it at Blue Bloods. That's even more impressive than doing it at Blue Bloods. But Jim Boeheim, even Coach K, you mentioned at Duke, Jim Calhoun at Connecticut, when they got hired, Bobby Bowden with Florida State in football. When they got hired, they weren't blue blood programs. It wasn't easy to recruit there. They had to build them up from nothing, and then they became easier to recruit.
Right.
I'd imagine Mark Few building up Gonzaga. Of course, he had John Stockton already having played there and could help him in recruiting, but they were built up from nothing. They weren't this. And unlike those situations, it probably still was hard for him to recruit for a while because Pacific Northwest, you're not going to get the media coverage. Your national TV games are not going to start until midnight on the East Coast. When Adam Morrison was there and was vying for Player of the Year with J.J. Redick, a Duke player, Adam Morrison's games did not literally start until midnight Eastern Standard Time on national TV. Yes, every night, but people knew about JJ Redick more because it was just easier to watch him, and that probably maybe hurt Adam Morrison for the award. So to do this now is incredible, especially in this year. The only ding is it's not in a major. They're not in a major conference, so maybe
They're
for
showing,
the first.
yeah, you're right about that, but they're showing.
Now they
showing
are, yeah.
teams, yeah, they're showing these teams now that I don't see anybody coming within the more. I'll be honest, during the regular season, I saw bits and pieces of them. I didn't invest time because, as you said, we're at the time they play. I didn't invest time into watching long periods
Right.
of the game. I have now during this tournament. There's not a team that's going to. I don't care Baylor. They're not going to come within 10 points. This Gonzaga team is just that good.
Yeah, you would think. Although I guess the pressure's on that if somebody would beat them, and they're the only team that if they don't win the title, they're not going to really want to hang a banner. The rest of them for a Final Four is a big deal. But if Gonzaga does not win this all, yeah, I mean, obviously you hate to say a season's disappointing when you go undefeated and get to a Final Four, but that's really what this season's about. They've done the Final Four thing before, granted only the second time.
They just have too many. They do everything very well. The only
they have the size, shooting, defense.
The only person that's going to beat Gonzaga is Gonzaga, and I just believe that they have too deep of a roster. They're not a one-man team, and Jalen Suggs can have an off night or something, and they still have a rest of a roster that can pick it up for
It's
them.
Incredible, really.
Yeah, they're. I don't see that being a contest. I think they'll destroy UCLA, but I think Baylor Houston has it, or Baylor Houston.
Baylor Houston, yes.
I think that it has a chance to be a competitive game. Although I think Baylor will easily win, and when I say easily, 8 or more.
Yeah, and honestly, congrats to Baylor for two respects. Number one, it gives the Big 12 representative, because the Big 12 many thought was the toughest conference in the country this year, kind of disappointed in some other respects in the tournament. Big 12 gets there thanks to Baylor. And number two, Baylor may have dealt with COVID-19 more than any other program in the country. And despite all of that, even taking weeks off and then losing right away and losing, they almost had an undefeated season. This could have been two teams looking for an undefeated season if it maybe wasn't for the pandemic. And Baylor still gets there, which we know what the women are doing. And maybe this is one of the few programs in the country the women might be more successful than the men historically. But the men now getting their recognition, doing it. And this is a really good Baylor team. So honestly, if they didn't get to this point, especially after Ohio State lost early in their bracket, you would have hated to seen Baylor get tripped up because of the pandemic, which really did change how they played in their season. So them getting there is great. I think that's definitely going to be a much better matchup. I'm honestly surprised that UCLA, I thought Elite Eight was great, but then to beat Michigan, and that was a really low-scoring game, and that was perfect for UCLA. There's no way they can mirror that to Gonzaga. I mean, Gonzaga's scoring 70, 80-plus points. I don't think UCLA can score with them. I do think this is Gonzaga's title to lose. And also, we got to mention, too, in this weird, crazy tournament, two non-major programs. Houston, not a major either. So you have two non-major Power 5 conferences in this Final Four. That's not common. That's great as well. And we'll see.
Something else that's not common is the fact that Houston, Baylor, your eastmost region teams.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Normally you have somebody on the East Coast. Now,
TV might not like this.
Right, exactly. Houston's a good market, but the TV,
right, sure.
But that's pretty bizarre. And if I'm the West, I'm a little. I think this is good. This will be good for Gonzaga or
right.
Just the whole West Coast basketball. In that this is Mick Cronin's first year coming from Cincinnati to go into UCLA.
Right.
Able to do this.
It's incredible. Yeah.
They kicked him out of Cincinnati. He wasn't good enough. But, his first year in Cincinnati and in UCLA, and he hasn't really had a chance to recruit.
These aren't his players really.
Right. I think this is pretty scary for the Pac-12 that he was able to do this, and he was always a good coach. But honestly, he did have the reputation of doing well in the regular season, and then crap in the bed in the tournament.
Right.
But that hasn't happened this year, so that's a hard job.
No,
And
no, yeah, absolutely. And it'll be interesting how it's perceived because you know how UCLA fans are, you know how they treated Ben Howland, multiple runners up. They didn't win a title. I didn't think he should have been treated the way he was without even banners being hung there on that success. But if UCLA does not win a championship or at least get to the game, they have this weird, ridiculous rule. They don't hang banners unless it's a title, even though there's only been one since John Wooden, the one in 95. And that was a weird era. Yes, John Wooden stacked them with 10, but there's only been one since in the last 4 decades. I really hope they don't do that this year, because for this team to be in a Final Four is insane. And they're the underdog despite being the blue blood against Gonzaga. This also would be a big deal for Gonzaga, I think, despite being a 1, to beat a Pac-12 team, because UCLA, if you recall, when they had Adam Morrison, UCLA is who beat them to ruin that year. It's a little bit of maybe program revenge to say, you're in the Pac-12, we're not, but we're going to beat you, and we're the blue blood here in college basketball.
yeah, so it'll be good. See what happens this weekend. But I'm ready for baseball. As you'll come to know, I'm a baseball guy. Despite how bad the Pirates are,
So am I.
I am ready for tomorrow to begin.
And we're almost here. It is almost opening day. Almost brings a tear to your eye. It's almost poetry in the sports world. And last year was a truncated season, to say the least. The Pirates, the expectations aren't really there for a winning season, to say the very, very least. Some are saying 100 games. Some are saying worst team in baseball. Even if they're a little better than that, I think the most optimistic are saying 3rd or 4th worst team in baseball. This is a rebuilding time, and they're finally rebuilding now. They made some moves in the offseason. Some of those moves I think were good. Granted, again, I don't think they're going to be good this year. You did ask me a few shows ago if the offense could pick it up and maybe surprise some. I think Ke'Bryan Hayes is going to be a player to watch from last year to see what he does in a full season. Many thinking he could be that all-star. I don't think the pitching gives you nearly enough. I think the pitching is just bad. With Cool starting, great for him, but I don't think there's nearly an ace on this team. I think Chad Kuhl's more of a number 3 starter on a good team. He actually was the last starter for opening day named for any team in baseball. He was the last one announced. It doesn't take credit away from him, but it shows you they weren't really sure what to do. Normally that's announced a week in advance to allow the media to celebrate you. It's great for him again, but he's a number 3 guy. They don't really have that starter that can carry them through games. I think you're going to see a lot of 3-2 losses maybe this year. I don't think much of this particular season, but we'll see how it goes for the future of this team. And then the Todd Frazier mess, we'll see if he ever actually swings a bat for the Pirates with him back now as a minor leaguer, even though he publicly said he didn't want to play in Pittsburgh. He couldn't get any offers when they were allowing him to test the market. And now he's back again for a minor league deal. What are your thoughts entering this season? We are on opening day eve. Chad Kuhl is the starter. It is Pirates Cubs. It's a full kind of season, more than last year for sure for COVID, with a few games chucked off. Not many are excited, but it's still baseball, and some fans can get down there.
Yeah, a couple things. I don't think the Pirates are going to be as bad, and that's relative. I'm not talking.
It is relative.
They're not going to be good, but I think their offense is actually going to. I think you hit upon the point there. The thing that's really going to hold them back from, I'm not even going to say being competitive, but being in more ball games.
Yeah,
is the fact that they just have no, as of right now, they have no starting pitching.
And I see none in sight. There's nothing in sight.
Well, in the minors, there's some guys
in the minors for the end of the season, minors, maybe in September. Sure.
Yeah, there's no.
I mean, to help this year, winning this year.
Yeah, there's nobody.
By that point, it'll be too late.
Yeah, there's nobody on the roster this year that
right.
You can build around. The only guy, and he's going to have to be. It's an interesting situation. Is Mitch Keller. He was the 1st round pick. Sure. A lot of similarities to what's going on with him right now to Tyler Glasnow. Glasnow was with the Pirates. He was awful.
That's big words, though, based on what we did last year.
They gave him opportunity. They gave him opportunities, but then of course they shipped him off in the infamous Chris Archer trade. And then all of a sudden,
Austin Meadows and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they win a pennant.
And then all of a sudden he goes to Tampa Bay and he turns into one of the best starters in the American League. If you look at his numbers, what he's done to this point of his career, including the spring training and all that stuff, his numbers mirror, meaning Mitch Keller, what Glasnow did. So the Pirates need Mitch Keller to. They can't invest another number one pick and have him be a bust. They need this year could be that's the biggest thing as far as what I'm looking for is
Okay.
this guy. He doesn't even have to be a one, but he has to be a guy that they can feel comfortable putting in the rotation every 5 days. And to this point, he hasn't looked it. But one of the benefits of being a bad team is that you could keep trotting him out there and learn on the job. They can't afford to cut him, or he's proven everything he can in the minors. He needs to be able to work and prove this in the big leagues. And to me, that's going to be the biggest thing that I'm looking for this year. But I think their bullpen's okay. I think their offense is going to be better than most people think. Starting pitching is just the thing that's going to sink them.
It's going to sink them. I think that's almost just a matter of time. I think we're going to see that early on. I do think one thing the Pirates need to do to have this be a respectable season, which again, respectable might be losing 95 games instead of 105 because no one has expectations for this year. I don't think that's a reason to celebrate like some maybe you're talking about they're going to have a parade if they lose less than 100. It's still rebuilding. But the only way they're going to save themselves and get in that neighborhood is if they do what they didn't do last year. Even when Joe Musgrove would have a solid start last year and he was a middle of the road starter, granted, he started opening day last year now with the Padres. They need to give run support whenever they get a rare, solid start. If somebody goes through 6 innings, they got to score. I know it's a young team. I know Ke'Bryan Hayes is only going into his first full season. I'm not saying I'm expecting it, not saying that it would be mad if it didn't happen, but it has to save them and have them lose less than 100. They got to have Brian Reynolds be better than he was last year. He doesn't need to be what he was 2 years ago when he was an all-star with a double every other night, but he needs to be better than last year. Josh Bell's not there. I do think for your offensive point, Mike, I think Ke'Bryan Hayes is a speedster. He's a great defensive player. He can be a solid hitter. He might even be able to be a 20-20 guy at some point, but I don't see there being enough power in this lineup. This is a home run hitters league, even in the NL. I don't see there being enough pop, which was the issue last year. They just got to give run support for these starters when they perform. I don't care who they are. I would expect the starting rotation to be moved around. Chad Cole starting opening day. I wouldn't be surprised if the way they move their 5, he ends up in the 3 or 4 in a month from now. They're going to switch that around potentially. I also want to look to see how the pitchers in particular are handled. Because if you recall at the end of last year, granted, again, COVID, they knew the season wasn't going anywhere. They would leave pitchers in games longer than any team in those last 2 weeks. They would let them throw pitches they weren't used to throwing. It almost felt like they were calling the final 2 weeks for the pitchers like spring training. I'm not saying they're going to do that early in the year because they want to try to win, but I would wonder when they go into that neighborhood. If they're 10, 15 out in late July, do they start going there earlier or do they still wait until late September if they know the season's over? So I'd like to see how they call this team, how they handle the pitching staff especially. But that's just going to sink this team. I don't think there's any way around it. It's not even anything against those guys. I think they're in missed positions. I think Chad Kuhl is going to get criticized as an opening day starter. He's the worst opening day starter in baseball. He's the worst number 1 in baseball. He would be a number 3 on every other team. So you have to look at it as relative of the Pirates for sure.
Yeah. They're just not good enough yet. But
No,
I think
not.
in some trades that Sherrington made in the offseason, there were some guys acquired. And I think that, by mid-season, as you mentioned, I think some of those guys, once they get some time down in the minors,
Right.
you're going to be seeing, and I wouldn't be at all surprised seeing the thing that I hate is that bullpen whatever I forget what's even called, but you start a bullpen guy for a couple innings and
bullpen by committee is what you're talking about?
no they actually don't start the starter. I forget what that's the Tampa Bay thing where they pitch a guy innings, another guy 3, just because they don't.
They did that in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, just because they don't have that starter, but it's something that I really I think their offense. I was glad to see Kevin Newman win the job and not just given the job out of default.
He's important. He set the table.
Brian Hayes, without a doubt, actually, it's pretty. One of those were your 2 best players in spring training. The guy hit 700. Adam Frazier
right.
Hit over 500. And he's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised that if he keeps doing well, he could be a piece that could be moved eventually if he's able to convert that over to the regular season as well. And I think Brian Reynolds is a fun guy to watch.
He is. He got a lot of flack last year, though.
Yeah, he's coming in. It's kind of funny. He's coming into the season a little bit, or he came into last season like Brian Hayes is. I remember some of the national media.
A lot of hype. Yep.
Some of the people on the MLB network interviewing Shelton regarding the type of player Reynolds is and how good he could be, and they were hyping him up.
It's because of how well he played 2 years ago, though.
Right,
exactly. He had an historic season that I think is underrated. Yeah.
And now you're getting similar comparisons to Hayes, which I think that guy has just superstar written all over him. He has a different.
He has to be the next face of that franchise for that franchise to have the future. Has to be the guy, right?
He has a different look about him that he's a player. So that's something to build on. But hopefully, the biggest thing is they need a couple guys to develop in the rotation, and we'll see what happens. We'll starts tomorrow. But the other thing that I think they're going to benefit by is maybe they won't be as good, but I think the National League Central was really bad this year.
I think that's factual. I mean, besides the Cardinals, who everybody loves and they're that October cockroach, they're probably going to get there. But honestly, this is one of those weird years that the New England Patriots benefited. One of those years they went to the Super Bowl in 2012 or 2011. They weren't really that great, but there was almost nobody else, so they got in by default. The Cardinals are going to probably get in by default. They're good. They're not great. They've had better teams that didn't get in. But the Cubs are shipping players off. They're less than they were before. Milwaukee, maybe it seems like they're finally at the end of the line. Yeah, I mean,
the Reds are normally what they are. They start out well.
They don't even have the hype they had last year. People aren't even expecting anything from them.
I just don't think the division is.
You lose Trevor Bauer, right?
Yeah, and I think the Pirates, in some fashion, will benefit from that. I don't know exactly.
And they have an easier road. They lose Trevor Bauer won the Cy Young, and he's in the National League still with the Dodgers, but they don't have to face him seem like every other day any longer. That was an issue last year. They could never beat him. So he's gone. Yeah, he got roughed off a couple times, but he's still one of the best pitchers in the league. And that stacks the Dodgers, of course. And obviously Pirate fans are going to be upset about the market situation, but it's not those teams' fault that can keep spending. They're just going by the rules of Major League Baseball. It certainly hurts the Pirates, but we have seen small market teams have success. It's a smaller window. You have to seize the day during that window. We have seen smaller market teams win World Series, win pennants, including last year, Tampa Bay winning a pennant with former Pirate players. This is not the current window. They need to seize it when they get to the window. Maybe they didn't fully seize it last time and get that opportunity to maximize, but this kind of builds to it. This might be that 2011 period before that 2013 run where they're going to lose, but you need to see Ke'Bryan Hayes become that face. You need to see Brian Reynolds be better. You need to see someone as a pitcher step up to at least even next year be a solid number 2 would be nice, even if you don't truly believe in them to be a 1, and then something from the bullpen. You need to see something out of this year, and any player with too much success, of course, will be shipped off at the deadline, but it's baseball.
It starts tomorrow, 2:20 against the Cubbies.
Against the Cubs, so get excited. Major League Baseball is here. Opening day is here, regardless of what the Pirates do. That's at least a positive, but not much expected out of this season in terms of winning. Mike Vukovcan and Mike Asti here. Mic'd Up, presented by Martin Lawn Services. Hit up Doug Martin, 412-849-5894 on this rainy Wednesday morning and hump day of this holiday week, maybe for some of you. Either way, it's spring break for the rest of you. And then also to close out the program, we can't have a show without him. This is our Cal Ripken streak. Pittsburgh Steelers, they are in the news, but not really making noise. This is a kind of a under the rug news story, but it's a position they finally needed to address, which is why we're discussing it. They had not addressed the running back position all season long. James Conner's still dangling out there. Who knows what's happening with him? That's kind of surprising, but obviously they needed to improve in this position. Even Randy Fichtner, Mike Tomlin, they all had said it even before Randy, of course, was exited out of the Steelers. Matt Canada then brought it up, and I can't say this moves the needle at all with Kellen Ballage coming over, former Dolphin, former Jet, 3.3 yards per carry last year. He's a guy that can be a spark plug. He's a complimentary back. He's certainly not a featured back. You need much more than him. The issues still remain. Any thoughts to this signing? Does it mean something else moving forward? Can he at least help this team maybe more than last year's group of running backs? Because last year's group was the worst in the NFL. It can't, I guess, get much worse than last year.
He's interesting. I'm trying to think of who he at first thought. He seems to me to be a bigger Benny Snell in that he's a guy that I think can help them out with short yardage. And I think that was Snell's role on the team last season.
It was supposed to be what Snell was even drafted to do, right?
I would think that there's going to be some competition for that spot, and I wouldn't expect him to go. I don't know necessarily if this seals. I've saw or I've read on Twitter people saying this seals the deal for James Conner coming back. I don't know that this guy is a every down back.
No.
Whereas you're right, where Conner is. So I don't know. I don't necessarily know that those two equate to each other, but I think this more affects Benny Snell than anything, and I have to wonder what they think about him.
And I can't imagine they're giving up on him yet, but I think what's going to occur is there's going to be competition in camp for Benny Snell, and that's something Benny Snell hasn't had. Since he was drafted by the Steelers, the thought process was he would be the complementary back to Conner. Conner would be every down. Snell would be the short yardage, third and goal situations for, late first downs, trying to get first down on third down. And while Connor's been hurt and has not been a feature back by any means, I think that ship has sailed for me. But Benny Snell has also not lived up to his end of the bargain either, the Kentucky product, who had a great college career. We'll see what he can do if he can feel the heat of that pressure of a veteran who's been in the league for a few years and has done it in that role before, and if he can have more success. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if Benny Snell and Ballage are both on this team, even if one beats out the other in camp. I don't think they're done with Benny Snell. We'll also see what his personality is, because, Mike, I will tell you from being down there in camp, and I hope we can get there this year. I was down there 2 years ago, obviously, last year virtual. Hope we can get there in person this year. Benny Snell, flashing the pearly whites, very happy, would talk to every media member. Alan and I laughed because I went up to him during the high school game there in Latrobe and said, "Hey, Benny, would you give me a second for a quick video interview?" And his exact response was, Mike, "Well, of course, I can't say no to you guys." And Alan and I, he was standing right there, and we're like, "You can. I mean, people have. Yeah. I'm certainly not batting 1,000, but he did it because he just wanted to really ingratiate himself. He loves smiling. Every screenshot is him smiling, flashes pearly whites. I wonder what his attitude will be and if he's going to be like that now, knowing somebody's breathing down his neck and his spot's not secure. Not saying he's a malcontent or he won't be happy, but he has pressure on him for the first time in his NFL career. Is he going to be as excited, or is he going to be more business focused and he maybe won't want to do interviews, which will be fine if that helps him on the field. But I just wonder if he'll be different at all during camp and if we can get down there in those interactions. So the running back room's improved, I guess, but they made a move, which is something, but it needs so much more. The needle's not moved for me, and the Conner question is still out there. That's the decision.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I think they put competition in the room, whereas Snell and Ballage, and then on the other side, I think it's going to be between, I don't know that you're going to see Samuel and McFarland both. I think those are both the same type of player. So I think they're going to pit those two against each other. And then obviously
McFarland has burst, but Samuels has been around.
In some fashion, they're going to bring in they're going to draft a running back. I don't know what round.
Oh, they got to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, that's going to be your roster. So I guess there's still, if they have money, I guess there's room on the depth chart to bring in another running back if they want more of a every down back, if there's such a guy out there on the market right now.
Yeah, I don't know. It might actually honestly be James Conner might be the only option right now if they somehow get him on a hometown discount.
I'm not closing the door. The fact that, we're hitting April already and, it's been 3 weeks or 2 weeks of free agency or whatever. And there's not been the only rumor I saw with him were the two teams were the Jets and the Eagles. And that was a couple without,
and the Dolphins way back.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's the question that's hanging out there. Again, he's tweeting up a storm. that we mention every day here, just for the joke of it. I don't know what those tweets mean. He seems like he's foreshadowing. He's thinking. He's pontificating on what's going on with his career. Getting very religious on Twitter. So they got to be. Obviously, he's not going to be out of the league. So where he's going to play is going to be a question, and when that decision will be made. Maybe he's taking a holiday rest to think it over. But a hometown discount, I thought he was gone. But yeah. I will say, if he comes back to the Steelers, he's really taking humble pie. He's not going to get tons of money. He won't be a feature back. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's in competition for even the number one role, which I don't know if he would love. So maybe he just has to leave if he wants that role. But I don't know if that role is even out there anywhere. So if he's going to be a backup, maybe he'd rather do it with the Steelers. Or maybe then he could win the job again. And if he can be healthy, that can shut me up. The problem is he has not been healthy. He has had times where he has been great. He's had 150-yard games. He just then, the next week, would get hurt and miss 4 weeks and then come back and suck for 2 or 3 weeks again. And that's just hard to deal with in the NFL. That'll do it for this Hump Day edition of the show. We did a live one for you this morning. We could not offer any chatting, though, as we wanted to get through this. We had a lot of topics to discuss. We're going to be with you tomorrow and then Friday and then throughout the week, of course. And then your little, maybe longer spring, holiday, Easter, whatever you may celebrate, break coming up. Still the madness of March, but April not far away at all. And then, of course, that's tomorrow with Major League Baseball's opening day. So we close off this madness-filled March, a better one than last year, at least, to say the very, very least, with this last March edition of Mic'd Up on PSL. For Mike Vukovcan, I'm Mike Asti. For all of us here at Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now, that'll do it for this show, and that'll do it for March. So see you tomorrow and in